Hi, and welcome to the second Charlie Spotlight interview. My name is George O'Connor, the writer and co-creator of the new comic book Charlie Spot, and today I get to talk to and maybe introduce you to Allie Pipitone, the colorist from Charlie Spot. I go into it in great lengths when I start talking to Allie, but what I'll always be appreciative of her beyond her talents is the enthusiasm she brought to the project. It was well-timed and so appreciated, and helped revitalize my excitement about this project to get it over the finish line. So if Allie is new to you, I'm really excited to introduce you to her. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Allie Pipitone.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, and it's my favorite part of of anybody that I talk to, is like make you uncomfortable right off the bat by just throwing compliments at you. Because if I know anything about creatives, this is the worst part of anything, is being forced to listen to somebody else heap praise upon you. So if anybody checks out Charlie Spot, even just the preview pages that we've put up, the talent is there. The coloring, expertise is there. It jumps off the page. The way you brought these pages to life was just such a joy to see when they hit my inbox. So first of all, thank you for the days upon days of joy and smiles you gave me throughout this process. But the reason I will take a bullet for you and encourage anybody to work with you is the enthusiasm that you brought to the project. Just the way these things work. Myself and Meredith are kind of on the front end getting these pages done, and somewhere around halfway through the project, I get introduced to you, and then you come on board. And that enthusiasm was such a huge bit of rocket fuel to get this thing over the finish line. To see you excited about the project and the story reminded me, as we're in the middle of the muck and the grind, right, this is a thing I love. Like, beyond a thing I'm trying to get over the finish line, I want to get it over the finish line because I do like the story. I am excited about this. And so I can't tell you how much air I was able to take in off of your enthusiasm. So to anybody listening to this, my God, if you need talent and energy and enthusiasm, ladies and gentlemen, Allie. Hi.
Hi. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. So, first things first, if we want to kind of like introduce everybody to everybody, let's do the origin story. Nobody gets into comics because they're like, and this is how I will retire on an island. So it's for the love. There's something about the media that then turns us from fans into creators. So I am curious, what hooked you as a reader, and then maybe what was the turning point for you wanting to make your own?
Honestly, well, it started with Pokemon. If we're gonna start at the very origins of it, I got my hands on the original like Pokemon manga way back in the late 90s, and just absolutely fell in love with it. And that I was always that kid that has like the stereotypical I draw on my walls kind of backstory, and then my parents just kind of gave up after a while, like it couldn't be stopped. So then trying to do that with Pokemon and then comics, starting to put together like sequential narratives, because I thought I was going to be the best Pokemon designer in the world and nobody was going to stop me, hell or high water. So I was not the best Pokemon designer in the world, but I thought I put together a pretty decent story. So I would at least kind of play around with those comics, sequential narratives, making little gag comics, and other things that I was a fan of at that time. Neopets was a big influence somehow. And then for a while, I just stopped. And it wasn't until, honestly, I probably stopped for about a decade or so, between high school and then like near the end of my undergrad and everything else associated with that. And I was just so bored at school, even college, and it felt like nothing else was happening. I couldn't get enough practice or do everything I wanted to do. And I, on a whim, just joined a random competition for those who speak German to draw comics in German. So I was like, okay, well, I've got a few days. And I did that, and I ended up winning somehow. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm decent at this again. So then I just started joining different competitions, like really small user-run things, and I kept winning competitions. So I was like, oh, crap, there's something here. So I decided to go to grad school for it, and, well, here we are. So...
was there a reason you kind of fell out of it in that high school, college age, or was it just kind of just like the just roller coaster journey of life?
I think it was roller coaster journey of life, and then especially in high school, it was a lot of denial about like, I don't want to be an artiste. So I switched majors in college like 6 times between English, history, German. I mean, it just got ridiculous before I was like, all right, you know what? I feel pretty good about art. Let's just go for it. You got nothing else going at this point, so.
So it was always the art and the kind of creative expression was always in the back of your head?
Always, yeah. I know, I think one of the reasons I put it down too is like I got really focused on music, but I ended up hurting my wrist, so I can't play music anymore. So it really kind of pushed me back into art, and I kind of got any of like that anger I had as like a kid of like, I can't do what I want to do anymore. I got to put into just improving my craft that way. So it allowed me to refocus and realign with something I was still very passionate about.
Were you, I guess, what was kind of the re-sparking of it, or was it not necessarily re-sparking, but you just kind of like embracing like, all right, look, this is my DNA, this is my makeup?
I think a lot of it honestly was just bits of like the competition, or just even it's hard to say. I've had a lot of like not so great art teachers in my life that were very much so like, you suck at this, don't do this. And I have been gifted with the ability to be incredibly freaking stubborn. You can't tell me to do anything, unfortunately. You can ask nicely, but as soon as it's like, you have to do this, watch me go the other direction. It's bad. My parents hate it. So, but I think it was just part of like that stubbornness too, eventually, of like, you know what, everybody says I can't do this, but I'm spiteful and I'm stubborn, so let's just make it happen. And also I do enjoy it. So
that's very cool. So was there a lot of space between undergrad and grad, or how did the decision come to going to grad school?
I took about a year off between the two, just because I did 2 victory laps in undergrad because I transferred schools and changed majors so many times. I was in undergrad for about 6 years, and I got 2 degrees out of it, which is great, but it was also just one of those things of, this is taking too long, and now I'm exhausted. So I was fortunate enough that I got to take a year off and really focus on kind of rediscovering why I liked art, and everything else to go with it. And that's when I was like, okay, I found out about the comics program down at SCAD.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is bizarre enough that I want to do it. Especially because I knew eventually I wanted to teach, which is a huge motivator for me. I had so many bad teachers that I wanted to go out there and be the change, and bring that positivity to other students. So like, somebody always felt like they had someone in their corner fighting for them. So that was also like, okay, to do that, I don't do well with kids, so let's teach college students because I don't know how to talk to children. It's like talking to dogs for me. It's just really bad. Don't let me near kids. But then with that, I was like, okay, I need like a master's degree, so let's go for something bizarre, and comics was it.
I could jump off to 3 different things right now. So I'll go with this because I knew I kind of wanted to talk to you about this, anyways. Because I mean, teaching is a massive part of your life now, and I teach as well. But I do 1 class a week, for 3 hours a week. So I'm not saying I'm anywhere near committed or as a vocation as you are, but you are a teacher in a creative field, and I do it in advertising. So I kind of want to dive into that a little bit, and let's start with being a good teacher, because I have the same feeling. I've come at it a little differently, where I kind of look at my work mentors, the people who, I could be working, I and my partner, our team could be working on a thing for a week, right? And we think it's great, it's awesome, it's sexy, we can sell it, we know why it's going to work. And, our creative director will, in minutes, blow it up completely. But the way he does it, the way he did it, and the feedback he gave us. I mean, I remember times, wanting to get back to my computer as fast as possible because, it might have just gotten blown up, but I know how to fix it. I know how to make it better. And so that positive creative feedback, even if on paper it looks tragic, it's powerful. It's powerful to ignite somebody's creative engines to dive back in. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that, maybe touching on who did it badly, or, we don't need to name names, but kind of the things you did have to go through to click that side on. It's like, all right, I want to do this, but I want to do this so this never happens again.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess I won't name any names. They're all still there. That's okay. No. The big thing I kind of dealt with was just like, I've had teachers and professors just be like, art is too competitive for you, or you'll not be good enough. Or I went to a portfolio review in high school, and this is what really, I think, killed my passion for it momentarily, and why I switched majors so many times when I got to college, was I went to a portfolio review, and this one guy opened up my portfolio and flipped through it for a bit, closed it, and said, not even a tech school would want you. You should give up entirely. And it shattered me, because at that point I had felt pretty decent about what I was doing, and I didn't have a lot in my life at that time to be particularly proud of, just with some kind of rough and tumble things from my childhood. So it was really kind of shattering for a bit, and to have that backed up by like all these other like teachers I'd had in my life, I was like suddenly like, well, this is a professional, and if he says it, then maybe everybody else is right. So I had to kind of step back and realign with like what it was that I loved about this medium. And I think too, it's like that's about the same time that the issue with my wrist popped up, so I had to stop playing violin. So I was like, okay, well, now I have to kind of figure out what it is that I want most out of life. And it took some soul searching and playing around. And even in college, my undergrad, I didn't have a lot of really amazing art professors. I had a few that stood out, which were good, but it was never, I don't know, it took a lot for me to kind of like get over that hump and then realize like, no, I mean, even at a young age, like my favorite birthday gift was one of those really cheap, like big art kits, the like wooden box one that looks like a treasure chest, and you're just like, oh man, this is it. I've got it. No one's gonna stand in my way ever again. There's there's a video of 7-year-old Allie like holding it over her head and screaming, "I'm an artist." So somewhere. So at that point, I was like, well, maybe I should go out and boombox style scream, "I'm an artist," in a field somewhere. And I just kind of rolled with it at that point. So, especially when it comes to teaching, I don't want people to ever have to feel that same despair. I think there's a lot of character growth that comes from it when it's necessary, but there's such a way to inspire without tearing people down.
Yeah. This may be a tangent, this might not. Have you ever seen the movie Whiplash?
It's been a hot moment.
Okay.
I like talked about it in my class this quarter, but like if I'm totally honest, I like didn't actually see it. Or that part I talked about, I just read some like reviews and pretended.
No, it's something that I think about as well, kind of what you're talking about, is, you know, what is the best way to inspire? And, you know, there's definitely a theme in Whiplash, and apparently some of the people, unfortunately, you ran across, which is like, if I beat the fuck out of them, that they'll come up like a phoenix. But I think about how many people that attitude killed, you know, and how much joy that took out of, you know, one person's world. And then, you know, if we want to get totally over dramatic for a second, how much joy was taken out of the world because that one creative person had their flame put out. You know, so that's I'm sorry you went through that. I'm glad that there's some sort of that punk DNA in you, apparently, that, you know, dusted yourself off, threw a couple middle fingers, and kept moving forward. So when you're now, I'm trying to think of people who might be watching this right now and are relating to that story. And what was your thinking? Do you have any advice for that? You know, and we're not just talking about just, you know, a review where it's like, okay, change, you know, the core is there, but change X, Y, and Z. Or, you know, you need to work on hands, you know, shading, color theory, that type of thing. We're talking about, you know, shutting your book and saying, please don't ever do this again. Do you have any advice for somebody who might have been hit with that stick? You know, I mean, you got through to the other side, you know, and again, I will just go back to Charlie's spot, but, you know, at some point we're going to give all your links out so people can see everything you do. Like, the talent is still there. The dude was wrong. But it was left up to you to dust yourself off. So for somebody in that scenario, just what was going through your head, or just how did you put one foot in front of the other?
That's a good question. I think there's a number of different like things that I've kind of gone through in my life to be like, all right, I know how to survive this because I've survived a lot. So, okay, how do you put one foot in front of the other? And a lot of it I will credit with, one, again, I'm incredibly freaking stubborn. But two, like having that one positive force in my life. And for me, that was my grandma. So having that one person to be like, you got it, kid, keep on going. And that, it was a hard lesson to learn, but even just having to like look at myself in the mirror and say, you can do this, even if I didn't fully believe it myself at the time, was just honestly one of the things that, like, understanding that I have to be in my own corner. If I want something, I have to be able to fight for the things I want, because I can sit there and be upset about what this person has to say. This person who doesn't know my story, doesn't know what I've had to go through or fight in order to get as far as I have. Or even, it's just kind of there because some people, quite frankly, are assholes. Like, that's just, it sucks, but not everybody's going to be your greatest fan. So at that point, I think what helped me the most, besides having, that stubbornness and that one person saying, you got this, was understanding that I had a story that I wanted to tell, and I still have many stories I want to tell. And I'm not going to be able to do that if I stop. If I stop, I'm going to be like every other artist that gave up. And I refuse to be one of those, especially because any other artist that gave up gives me more room to shine. So don't do that. Don't make my job easier.
That's awesome.
I like a challenge.
Good Lord, I love you even more after hearing that story. I'm glad you were able to move forward. I mean, forget the fact that, for this shining, universal moment, I get to, benefit from that. I get to be in your sphere. But just the fact that you get to do what you want to do, like, forget that, like, what's in your soul, so like a creator to another creator. I am so glad that you were able to move forward. I am so very excited to see what you create and to see those stories come out. I think one of the interesting things that I've thought about through the whole Charlie Spot process is, with you and Meredith, you're storytellers on your own. If it's not already out there, in the very near future, y'all will have books out with just your name on it very soon. And bringing that mentality, that storyteller mentality to Charlie Spot, I've seen how y'all have elevated it, because, it's not just about the lines or the colors. You're thinking that those storyteller layers. I don't know if this is making any sense outside of my brain, in a way, like, y'all are doing me a service by, I don't know, like I said, funneling all of that thought and care and expertise into a specific part of the story, rather than, doing it all, because, like I said, you can. And, we just benefit from the world bringing this foursome together to tell the story. And I can see that care and that expertise and that thought process, in your work. So again, it's awesome to watch. It's humbling to be a part of. And so I would love to go back a little bit more of your journey, because I had asked Meredith this, and I'd love to ask you as well. There are different schools of thoughts about school or not for art, and specifically comic book art. So, was there much of a debate before you decided to go to SCAD? And I'm curious, if there was, what were you kicking around? And going through the system, what are the benefits that you've gotten out of that from going that route?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So when it came to my decision to go to SCAD, a lot of it came down to, I was very dissatisfied with things that my undergrad left me with. And I don't say that to throw shade or anything, but there was so much more that I wanted that I didn't feel like I got. And some of that was, my own fault, not pushing myself harder in the earlier stages of really embracing those core foundation studies that are necessary. Admittedly, I was that jerk of a student that blew it off, and now I teach foundation studies, so there's a bit of irony in that. But I felt like I had to do so much more outside work to make myself competitive with the things that I wanted to do. And I knew necessarily what I wanted, just not how to get there. So I found out SCAD existed, and I mean, I'm not trying to obviously sell it or anything here, but it blew me away, honestly. The things that I could learn, they put on, they do a really good job of kind of like bringing people together in terms of, here are the things that you can learn. So I was really impressed when I visited, which was really great. So for me, it was just that year of like mental recovery between undergrad and grad school. But then again, that was the year my grandma passed away. So like I promised her that I would, you know, make something of myself, and I would go to grad school because I knew that I could learn what I wanted to learn. So I ended up in grad school because of my grandma, mostly. So, but also because I just wanted more and they gave me more.
That's awesome. And you're teaching there now, right?
Yeah, over at the Atlanta campus. So
nice. So if I've got this right, part of the reason you wanted to go at least to grad school, maybe specifically SCAD, was so then you could teach art. Now that you are on that side, I'm always curious about, you know, the mentality or the experience of like, when I get to spot X, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and blah, blah, blah. For me, it's like, you know, the quickest and easiest thing for me is like, well, if I become a dad, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. You know, and then the kid arrives and it's like, aha, reality, imagination. Let's see what, you know, perceived reality. Let's see what happens when they smash together. How has it been for you? Yeah, I mean, since this was a driving force into your into your decisions, how has it been being on the other side? I'm always curious about what you learned that you didn't realize you needed to learn, if that makes sense.
I think the number one thing I learned is no one's actually an adult. Like, and that goes not just like teaching or anything. Like any adult that I've met is still getting it sorted. And I have a lot more empathy for my professors now than what I had before. Good. So there's a lot of growing that happened that way. But on a more, you know, like serious note with it too, I love it. I think it's amazing, truly. It, to me, and I think you might understand this as a musician, that moment before you step out on the stage, there's that little bit of like fear and anxiety. But as soon as you're out there, you hear the roar of the crowd and the lights are on you. Suddenly, everything else is gone, right? And that's what I felt when I played violin. And so every day I go to class, there's always that little bit of setup. But as soon as, like, you know, lights, camera, action, we're here and I get to talk about the things that I love and share that with people, there's nothing else in the world. So I feel such an immense gratitude for that on the other side that I didn't know was possible, because it feels like things are lining up in a way that I missed for a very long time.
That's so wonderful. I'm so glad you have that. So I want to kind of go and pick your brain as a colorist, you know, because as little as I know about sequential art, like I know even less about color. And again, I love listening to experts kind of break down what they do. So if this is too open-ended, let me know, or just take the open-endedness and run with it. And answer the question you think I'm asking. But when you get a script and you get the artwork, you know, what's kind of like the first thing you do when you're kind of thinking about the color palette and your part of creation?
So for me, the first thing I think about, and it depends on the type of story, to be honest. For something that's grounded more in reality, like Charlie Spot is for a fair amount of it, I look most predominantly at the time of day And then from there, okay, well, it's this certain time of day, but I want to maybe think a little bit about color psychology. What I want as a dominant color to really draw focus, and then any accent colors I need is what the characters are going to be centered around. That way, the characters are always noticeable on a page. But for other productions, like I've got my story that's pretty out there and pretty trippy, I look at contrast first and foremost, and what kind of colors are going to enhance the storytelling moment the most. So if there's something really crazy going on, I'm going to use some really saturated craziness with some really bright colors that contrast each other, versus, you know, there are a few moments in Charlie's Spot where like I throw some of that in there. So everybody chiming in, just hang in tight for even more. It's fun.
Yep.
But those are like the two big things from there. So
excellent. And your thought process. If there's an aspiring colorist watching this, or someone just looking to level up, what kind of advice do you have for someone looking at their story, or thinking about kind of like those first opening steps of the process?
Mm-hmm. Color can be ridiculously intimidating. I know that it's one of those things people tend to struggle with for a while, and I think I got kind of lucky learning it, because I taught it to myself. I never had a color theory class. I just got sick of not really knowing color, and I had done some oil painting, but things weren't meshing, so I literally walked into a Menards, which is our Midwestern version of Home Depot. And I went to the paint section, and I literally took one of every paint swatch. I've got like 1,000 of these things in a shoebox, and I laid them all out, and I started matching colors together, and that's how I figured it out.
Wow.
Because I was really bored when I was younger. But it helped me because I got to kind of like imagine those things. So like the first steps, honestly, is start with black and white. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but if your values are not good, your color will be awful. I guarantee it.
Can you explain that again for like an uninitiated?
So start painting things or drawing things in black and white, and then from there, like, establish a very clear level of contrast, that value hierarchy. So are you using really light shades with really dark shades, or is it all just really all one kind of gray? The more differentiation you have in that value scale, the stronger your colors can be. And I know that sounds crazy because you haven't gotten to colors yet, but when you start applying that kind of hierarchy in colors have a natural amount of brightness or darkness to them. And then you actually mix even more like black or white into it, or you mix other colors together. So from there, you'll start to notice like, oh, this is going to look better because I've got a light next to a dark, or I've got a better transition. So now I can see what those forms are doing. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think so. You know, again, it's like I said, this is, you know, people make careers out of knowing all of this stuff, you know. So I understand, you know, like I said, I know enough to know how much I do not know. But again, I love hearing the thought process behind it. And if I can see if we can pivot this real quick, when people see your work in Charlie's Spot, what were some of the choices that went into this specific color palette? This might sound incredibly like uneducated coming out of my mouth, which makes sense because of everything I've already said. I would say it feels a little painted. You know, I don't, it's not cartoony comic book stuff. I mean, I feel like you can feel the colors and the richness in it. And so when you're looking at something like this, I'm curious on what led you to the color palette and style that Charlie ended up in.
Well, shout out to Meredith for her beautiful inks, because that definitely was the major deciding factor in how I was going to render things. Because that was something we had talked about at the very beginning when I was brought on, is how can we kind of merge her style with mine, because I've got like 7 or 8 different coloring styles. It's just like, okay, now how do I take pieces of it and apply it to her particular inking style? And she has a very expressive way of inking, and I want to bring some of that through with the colors too. So when it came to determining palettes and everything else, again, it was like, okay, what's the time of day and what's the overall mood that I'm going for? Is this supposed to be a really high energy, exciting moment? Well, then let's use some brighter colors. Or is it supposed to be our dark night of the soul? Are we a little bit sadder here? Let's desaturate things. Let's pull things into darkness and reduce contrast even more, so we can really isolate Charlie in those moments where, I mean, no spoilers, but everybody has to go through some crap. So that's indicative of life and not just stories. So
that's very cool. And again, I love hearing that stuff. I am a process nerd. Some of my, I will listen to a podcast. I'm not a country fan, but one of the most interesting podcasts I just listened to was a very successful country writer break down his process. And again, just kind of hearing an expert go through that, because chances are the majority of people who read Charlie Spot aren't inkers, aren't artists, aren't colorists, right? They take it at face value. But I love knowing everything that goes into something that looks, smooth, easy, because it's not. A lot of conversations happened, a lot of work, a lot of years of expertise went into the moment Charlie landed, and then a lot of expertise and thought went into creating it. And again, I love diving in and kind of reminding people, and I guess myself as well, again, being naive as I am, like, the stuff just doesn't happen. You don't just grab a page and you go, bleh, done. There's care and a lot of thought that goes into it. So thank you for taking me through that journey.
No, thank you. I mean, it's one of those things, I wish there was a button in Photoshop that says just do it, but we haven't gotten that far into the AI yet, so.
No, but then you get the human touch in it, because I think, if we want to kind of pull it back to, I think, one of the lucky things that happened with this book is, the 4 of us coming at it from 4 different directions, but there was something about this story that hit all of us, where it wasn't just the next job. There was a little more to it. And I think that's why this thing elevated the way it did when everybody touched it. It wasn't just I'm doing colors. There was more to it. It wasn't I'm drawing, a panel. There was more to it. Again, which is why, I'm so excited to get this thing out there, and I'm so thankful, to you for coming on board. We've talked a lot about Charlie Spot. I want people to know about, like, what you're creating. What's out there that's got your name on it that people can find? How can they follow you? How can they learn more about you? Because again, I want Charlie Spot to be like an initiation point for an explosion of all the stuff that you do.
Awesome. Okay, yeah. I mean, right now, school is kind of the priority there. So a couple of my big projects are on hold, but especially over this winter break and over the next couple of quarters, I've got a little bit more free time happening. So I'm very excited to kind of jump into my projects, because I tell darker stories in general. I really like kind of either end of the world or at least end of somebody's world kind of stories. I think I just gravitate towards that, like, darkness. If there's some bad things happening, I'm like there with popcorn, like, yes, how can we make this worse? So, which is like very opposite of, I think, who I am a lot of the time. Because, like, I'd like to think I'm a pretty, like, happy, like, yay, here we are. But then, like, you know, I'm right there with, like, the pitchfork ready for the rice. Like, yeah, burn it down. Like, so, you know, I guess it depends on what time of the day you catch me.
Fair
But
enough.
for my personal stories, there are a couple that I'm kind of seeing through bit by bit. The big one it's on the back burner, but it's the first one to be pulled off the burner to come back onto the cutting board and everything else is called CL, and that is it's a big dark sci-fi kind of saga I'm looking at. Hoping to keep it around 8 to 10 issues, but we'll see what happens. That is essentially about two friends who, during a technological like a Cold War, a race war happening between their two countries, they accidentally unlock a long thought dead ancient race, and just a lot of mayhem and bad things happen. I mean, it's a little bit of a love letter to dark sci-fi, which I've never been a huge fan of until this moment, so it's fun. And then there's an autobio I'm working on as well, predominantly for a lot of things that like went down this past summer that I think is going to be a good healing project for myself. But also I'm looking to kind of reconnect with kind of like younger Allie in a way, and hope to help out other people who can connect with her story as well. And then there's just Edwardian fantasy murder stuff happening in the other one. There's like 3 or 4, and then there's another sci-fi one that's a group project that we'll see where it goes.
So the theme I'm kind of picked out over this last 30-40 minutes, that again just like makes me even more of a fan of yours, is you going through shit and part of your brain kicking in, and let's make sure nobody else has to go through it. Or if they have to go through it, there's a life raft for them. That is so beautiful and commendable, and I love that you're putting that into the world. I love that that's one of your drivers, and now I'm ready to take 2 bullets for you, because that's beautiful. I am so glad that this project brought our circles together. It's been wonderful seeing your work. It's been even better getting to know you. So for our previous conversations, and especially for tonight, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to more people knowing who you are and the person and the talent behind it. So let's help them out. How can they learn more about Allie? Where can we send them?
My website and my social media and everything else is just so unused at the moment, which is terrible. Instagram is probably where I am the most active, but I think my last post was like Halloween last year, so working on it. But my website as well, so I don't know if that's something you can put on the screen or something, because they're not easy to spell.
Everything will be linked below so they can find you. Again, I've become such a fan of everybody making this, and become a fan of yours, that I kind of want like everybody to become a fan as well. So we're going to try and make it as easy as possible for when you do have your stories available, and everybody can come out and support you and those stories. I can't wait to read them and support them and scream them from the rooftops. So at worst, you've got one person like ready.
Well, I mean, if
credit card in hand, ready.
Well, if I've learned anything, I mean, it's one person, and that positivity, that changes everything. So you are appreciated, George.
Thank you so much for tonight and for everything. And yeah, everybody check out the links below. This has been Allie, and she's awesome, and now you know why.
Thank you.
So that's Allie. You got a little taste of why I immediately became a fan of hers, both as a person and as a creator. And I hope you will now become a fan of hers as well. All of her links are down below. And even if she's going to say she's not on it that much, let's all make sure that we are a fan of hers and following her for when her stuff does come out, and we can give her all the support and love that she has given out to us and the world. Check out the links below for Allie, and if you haven't had a chance to back Charlie Spot yet, you can head over to Kickstarter right now, and we have an exclusive Kickstarter-only cover created by Allie, and you can grab that in a bunch of our tiers. So check it out, Charlie Spot on Kickstarter. Thank you so much.